Thank you, Rocco, and thank you for taking the case. We've been concerned about it for a long while, as you know, and now it's de facto, and we're on our way. And I know that everyone's feeling very confident because you're the one that's going to plead our case, and I would expect to win on behalf of the people of Canada. Well, the title of this little 5-minute expose I have is entitled "Why I Am 100% Opposed to CETA." And I guess for this, in one line, it would be to save the Prime Minister from making the biggest mistake that any Prime Minister has made in the 67 years since I first set foot in Ottawa. But then, to refine that a little bit, there are two profound reasons for opposing the ratification of CETA. First, it would be illegal. It would result in a unilateral change in the Constitution of Canada. And that is outside the power of both the government and Parliament. The second reason is that to ratify CETA would be monstrously immoral. It would be the biggest betrayal of Canadian rights and privileges in the history of the country. Not only would it give foreign banks and corporations greater rights in Canada than those enjoyed by Canadian citizens, which is indescribably wrong in my opinion. It would give foreign bankers an effective veto over use of our most valuable financial asset, the Bank of Canada, at the very moment when we need it most. The situation today is reminiscent of the 1930s. In 1938, there were no jobs in Canada, none. Then the war came along, and pretty soon everybody was working, either in the armed forces or building factories or making munitions. And you say, where did the government get the money to accelerate growth to this extent, to do these things? The answer is that the Bank of Canada printed it. P-R-I-N-T-E-D, it. The money creation function was shared between the Government of Canada and the private banks. This system was maintained after the war and helped pay for our large infrastructure projects. The St. Lawrence Seaway, the Trans-Canada Highway, the distant early warning line. Some of you may not remember, but there was a line of radar stations built all around the periphery of the continent, very expensive, and the Bank of Canada helped the Government of Canada to pay for that installation, as well as to help us pay for a very comprehensive and much admired social security system. All of this was accomplished without significant borrowing and with inflation in line with other OECD countries. Then in 1974, the governor of the Bank of Canada abandoned the needs of his shareholders and started taking his orders from the Bank for International Settlements, that is controlled by the elite international banking cartel. The result for Canada is that because we had to then borrow in the market, from fiscal year 74-75 to 2013-14, we had to pay $1.17 trillion, that's $1 trillion, in interest on debt. Almost all of it unnecessary. All of that, plus decades of underfunding for all of our essential services. We switched from prosperity to austerity, and the international banking cartel ended up with a monopoly over money creation. Well, all of this has to be reversed. The Canadian government gives the Parliament of Ottawa the absolute right to create or to have the Bank of Canada create all of the money necessary to meet the legitimate needs of the Canadian people. And as an aside, we need an infrastructure bank Canada needs an infrastructure bank like it needs a hole in the head. We don't need it because we have one. And it worked from 39 to 74, 35 years. It worked like a charm, gave us the best 35 years of the century, and all we have to do is learn from history and do something similar again. Well, in fact, there is a plan called a social contract between the government and people of Canada, which is available to Parliament now. And this plan calls for the creation of $150 billion a year for 7 years to be split between Ottawa and the provinces and territories on a per capita basis. But if CETA were ratified and implemented, prosperity would never be restored, nor the backlog of needs met, because European banks would sue Canada for tens or hundreds of billions of dollars if we denied them the opportunity to lend us the money and buy up our real assets for 5 cents on the dollar and keep us in poverty forever. The war between the rich and the poor that the rich have been winning would be over. So CETA must not only wither on the vine, but die on the vine and become nothing more than a footnote to history. Thank you.